Hello, everybody. We're here with the wonderful Catey Teacher, who's looking as splendid as ever. And I've got some wonderful questions that I would be dying to ask her, and she's dying to answer. So the first part of the video is going to be for the parents, with all of the questions about Catey Teacher as a teacher and as a human being. And then the second part of the video will be all about questions our kids, our students have asked that we're going to try to answer. Some of them are a little bit unusual, so it should be interesting. But Catey,
that's Jool style.
it's the way we roll. But Catey, my first question is about you. Like, who is Catey Teacher? Who is this person we've all heard about?
Oh, Catey. Well, I'm many things. I have done quite a few jobs in my life, but to begin with, small Canadian country girl from a middle of nowhere farm. I used to work with cows and run through the fields, a regular Anna Green Gables tale, if you will. I played hockey for the first 23 years of my life. And we did competitions. We traveled around Canada and the United States. And then from there, I decided, because we speak French in Canada, that I really wanted to be a translator, because then I could open myself up to helping others, and communication was very important to me. And when I went to university for that, I decided I also wanted to learn Russian. Why not? It's the most beautiful language in the world. And they have Catherine the Great, and I'm Catherine, and I'm great. I just felt it was meant to be. And so I studied that, and I realized, oh, I really enjoy Russian. So I went to go live in Russia. And I had an epiphany while I was there. Because when you go traveling abroad, you do need to make somewhat of a living. So I decided to teach. And I loved it so much that I decided to do it as a career. And I got my master's, and I was so excited. And I was going to live in Russia, and it was wonderful. And then I met a Spaniard, and it brought me to Europe. So now I've been to America, I've been to Russia, I've been traveling around Europe, and I'm just enjoying every moment of it. And along the way, I have come across Jool, which has also opened me up to the Korean culture, which is so much fun. There's so many colors, characters, and they're so beautiful. And I just am enjoying every moment. So that's about me in a nutshell, just enjoying life.
What a wonderful nutshell. Nut is almost the wrong word. It doesn't encapsulate enough of 23 years of hockey. Oh my goodness, that's
it's you're like a pro. Sport. If you can play it, because it will change your life.
Well, my embarrassing secret, my deepest, darkest secret, is that I have only been skating twice in my life, and I think that I needed about 4 days to recover from all of the extensive hematoma bruises that I developed from crashing into the wall, falling, and so I should really do it. It's the one thing it's my deep, dark secret that I can't skate properly. Or ski. I've never done either, and I'm a bit nervous about starting.
I can share that with you. I despise skiing. It's terrifying. Anything where your legs just cross together for no reason.
You would have the wonderful comedy moment of just tumbling down the hill, and all the way from the top to the bottom for like 15 minutes of rolling down the hill. I can't imagine that. Actually, that would be worth it. Maybe even worth it just to do it once and roll down the hill 50 and then walk off. Just take the skis off and just walk away. That would be enjoyable.
Like, are you all right? Yup.
Yeah. No, actually, no. I'll give up. This is it. This is my last. Anyway, my next question is about education, because I went to school in the UK, you went to school in Canada, but maybe for you it might be a more interesting question, because I just learned a language. That was it. We didn't even learn English. We just spoke it, and we were so suspicious of new languages. But how about your education when you're growing up? What did you love about it, and what would you kind of want to have changed if you could go back in time?
Well, I was quite lucky, because the bilingualism of Canada was still relatively new. It just came in the 80s under Trudeau. So then by the time the government got around to actually installing it into schools, I was able to get into a bilingual program by the time I was in grade 4. So about, I don't know, 10 years old. And I was able to study in a bilingual environment. I had a French teacher. I'm not going to say it was an effective environment. I mean, these things do take time, and there was a lot about bilingual education that Canada still didn't understand that we do now. And that's something that we can also extend now into ESL language, which is why it's so much more effective now.
Yeah.
But the one thing you said is we just spoke English. And that's pretty much how it was for us when we were learning English as well. And with French and English are so different. You can't speak French and learn French. You have to do the verbs over and over. English, historically, as you know, is more of a sung language. There are no rules. We didn't even have a spelling rules or anything till recently, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Recently.
Yeah.
It's shameful. So this idea that, oh, I have to study my verbs and I have to memorize this, you can't learn English that way. It's not the same as French. So the best thing for Jool, for example, I really appreciate that it is the natural way of learning. Use it, make mistakes, be silly, figure out this crazy language that really makes no sense, as opposed to French, where you sit down, you just write it and write it and write it and get it in your head. This is how it is. And if you don't remember that, well, then, oh, you are a failure, whatever. So if I had to change anything about my second language experience, it would have been that you need to travel, you need to have a context for it, you need to have meaning behind it, rather than just showing up. This is what you need to do to get the perfect mark. You did it, great. Now go in your English life and forget about it.
Yeah.
I would have rather it had some sort of meaning where we traveled or we used it every day and it helped me do something.
Because kids have voices and they really want to say something and give them a chance to say, what do you think about this? And what the kids come out with. It blows my mind, and it just reminds me of how limited I am intellectually when I talk to these kids who are able to kind of do what I'm doing in their second language, and they can surpass me a year later. It blows me away. The kids are just, you know.
You brought up another excellent point, because education is not, how do we say, just reserved for teachers. It should be part of society. It should be part of the family. And in Korea, they definitely have that. They value education and they want their children to actually know something. But I find, I mean, I can't speak for everybody. Everyone is their own person. But in general, where I am in Spain, for example, there's just, it's not the same kind of value. They feel that because I think I am, but you know, you actually have to work on thinking to become an effective thinker, to become a useful thinker, to become a productive thinker. And I think a lot of people take that for granted and they just don't work on that with their children. So when it comes to a program like Jool, or any kind of conversation where you need them to be able to express themselves, if they can't even have the discipline to do it in their own language, they're not going to do it for you.
Yeah. No, actually, it's funny you mentioned Descartes, because actually one of the first Jool page I ever wrote in the workbooks was "I think, therefore I am," and it has a picture of Descartes, and I just remember thinking, okay, I'm going to lay down the foundation with Descartes. And first, "I think, therefore I am," and you just brought that back. I've got to go back and gaze at that page lovingly next to me on the pillow at nighttime when I sleep, with Youngin teacher on the other side, rubbing his butt against my face. Just a thoughtful kind of statuesque pose. Well, a question I have, because I kind of said what I think about the kids kind of blowing me away, but I wanted to ask you, what do you think kids are capable of?
This is the thing that irks me. I am I say specialized young learner. I really enjoy from 2 years old and onwards, because the capabilities of children at that time is infinite. And I have 2 of my own children. They are between the ages of 1 and 3 as well. And I get into arguments with my husband sometimes because he says, don't do that. They're too little. They don't understand. And I'm like, my 1-year-old just looked at me and gave me a face that tells me everything I need to know. She knows exactly what she's doing. And the thing is, they know everything. And it's only as they get older they become less aware of what they know, like we are.
Yeah.
So I never ever doubt children and what they're able to think, what they are able to absorb, and how they interact with their surroundings, because their little minds are just so absorbent. It's incredible. And so when it comes to the Jool kids, they are not quite infants. They're already at a B2 level. But the things that they can do, the connections that they make when you put them in a context to make those, when you encourage them, when you give them permission, because a lot of them, I think, are used to having to sit and be told when it's their turn. If you give them permission, they make you laugh harder than you've ever laughed. They make you think about things that you've never thought of before. And they also twist things in a way that you thought, darn it, now what I thought I knew, I have to relearn, because this never even occurred to me.
No, it just switches on these questions that you'd never kind of considered. I mean, I do research for my lessons. Like, I'm teaching kids today at 8:15 Korean time, and I have to really do my academic research. It's like prepping for a university seminar, because I know that they will be very, very ponderous, and they'll be very, very discerning about whatever I say to them, and they'll object and say, that doesn't sound reasonable. I've got maybe one more question, and then we'll move on to the wonderful kids questions. How do you think that education should change in the future?
So many ways. All right, let's try to keep this concise but poignant. All right. If my mom was a teacher for 30 years, and I was in her classroom helping her prepare all of her materials, I was there when they instituted different learning programs, and I have just seen the degradation of education, at least in Canada. From the 80s onwards, it has been complete degradation to the respect of teachers and their autonomy as professionals, to the expectations of children, to the point where you can't even fail them now. You can't give them a mark. You can't even give them a complex problem. And it's all about, well, how do you feel this day? And well, if you don't want to, then it's okay. It's not okay. We need to have expectations. We need to let teachers take back their classrooms. And we need to have expectations of students that parents do have of their children, but is not supported within the system that we have right now. I would go back to basics. Classics. Teach classics. Teach what the children need to know in order to create themselves as a base. We are all humans, and our capabilities are infinite. We do not need to specialize in, okay, I'm going to be an engineer, so I'm just going to learn this, or I have to know this. No, some of the best people in history were able to do art, and they were able to be engineers, and they were able to do so many things and write. It was part of having a wholesome education. And we've lost so much of that now, to the point where it's just better having robots do it. And so I think in the end, we should be looking at more of maintaining our culture, our educational culture, instead of, I don't know, storing it on a AI computer and relying on that in the future. Because what we're going to lose in the end is what we've already lost so far in so many places, is our cultural identity. Music. A lot of music was lost. And the ability to communicate in a respectful, coherent manner, because now you say one thing, a person gets offended, and then everything breaks down. And how are we supposed to live together as a species if we don't know how to have proper communication, rhetoric? So, without pending Third World War conclusion, just get back to basics and teach how to enjoy learning and make it human again.
No, I totally agree. I think that even the expectations thing is a huge theme, and I know that because we've had some Jool teachers who've often asked me, why do you have the rule about you're not allowed to say good or bad in the class? And you know, honestly, it's symbolism for me about expectations, because the moment you can't say good or bad, it forces you into having this kind of, oh, okay, right, I've got to really think about what I mean here. Okay, I've got to really pick a word that captures what the essence of what I'm trying to say. And then the moment that you have that, then you can say, okay, so why do you think that? You know what I mean? And I feel like that does a couple of things. It raises the expectations of what we want from the kids. And like, no, I'm not that easy. You've got to be really specific, because I'm going to ask you why you think this. And then they kind of go on and develop these ideas, and helps them to expand things. I seem a bit like I always joke, and I may have mentioned this to you before, I always think of myself as a benevolent dictator, because think about in a conversation, how often do you say, why? Like, explain yourself. Give me an example. Analyze that. What's the problem with that? But I feel like this, and eventually I see these kids that it's almost like this kind of training in a sense, but these kids start to become so reflective, and they start to take a pause before they speak. And it's just, I love it when I see it, because it's like they're sifting through their ideas to really think about what they really think, rather than, you know, we live in this kind of instant world where we just throw things out and there's no feedback, you know.
It is bad, but there's no understanding.
Absolutely. So the good and bad thing. Yeah, people think I'm a bit of a lunatic, but it's an expectation.
I love it.
Set our
now
stalls.
I have to get them to stop saying, "Oh, it's not good. It's excellent." I'm like, no, that's still good. No.
Yeah, that just means really good. That just means really good. It's like, oh no, is it significant? Is it gratifying? But yeah. Now, Catey, we're going to take a little break for the people, for the parents. So parents, goodbye. Your work here is done. And we're going to answer the questions of some of our lovely children. Okay, right. So we have a question from Joshua. And Joshua's question was, what book took you the longest time to read?
Oh,
it's a fascinating question,
Joshua. All right. So I would be neglectful if I didn't do this in TEEA, right, James?
I get corrected by my students sometimes, and I don't do it. So, James, you didn't give an example of your idea. What's going on?
All right. The book that took me the longest to read was not the biggest book I ever had to read. So the biggest book I ever read was War and Peace. It's about 2,000 pages long and philosophical, and I adore it. I really adore Russian authors. However, the book that almost killed me when I read it was The Idiot by Dostoevsky.
Yes.
And it is also a fairly large book, but nowhere near as much as War and Peace.
Yeah.
But the characters, the themes, and the writing itself was just so heavy.
Yeah.
That I started to feel like I was going insane the more that I read it. So the story is about basically a guy that people think is insane, or as they say, an idiot. But he's quite misunderstood, and he has his issues. And you get to see his character unravel, and it's just so complex and so deep, and there's so many characters, and they've got Russian names. My brain was bubbling over, and there were times where I thought, if I do not put this book down, I will literally be put inside a straitjacket, because I can't handle this. I cannot handle it.
Yeah.
So if you ever want to go partially mad reading a book, I highly recommend The Idiot by Dostoevsky.
That's actually, it's funny about you mentioned the Russian writers. I went through a huge Russian literature phase when I think I was about 18. And I think I read War and Peace 3 times in a row. And I just remember, I think I did it to prove a point to my dad, who said, nobody reads War and Peace. Nobody enjoyed it. I loved it. Like Andrei, the characters are fabulous. And yeah, I read I never read The Idiot, although I have it on my Kindle. But actually, the longest book I've ever read is my current book, because I lost my Kindle somewhere in the world. I was on a plane, and then I arrived home and then found that I didn't have my Kindle anymore. So, the longest book I've ever read is the book that I currently haven't finished, because I've lost, and I'm not going to buy a Kindle for maybe a month to give them. I've got some paper books I should read that are sitting on shelves and literally going moldy. So I should pick them up and read them. Now, next question. Next question was from Hajun in Polymath 6-6. And he said, this is a very deep existential question. What is the purpose of living? Yes, existentialism in our elementary school students. What is the purpose of living?
Hajun's going to be a philosopher, I think.
I think so.
Well, it depends on your culture, I suppose.
Hmm.
But if we are to ascribe to a more perhaps classical, and I might even say Asian as well, type of philosophy, the purpose of living is to I believe it is to have an impact on your environment. What I mean by that is whether positive or negative, your existence matters, whether in the tiniest of amounts. And therefore, you must preoccupy yourself with fulfilling that role. So to give an example, a mosquito, annoying little thing that we all love to kill and vilify, it's food for birds. It eats fruits and has many more babies, so there's more mosquitoes and there's more food for birds, and they also do other things, and so they have a purpose. Are they going to write a novel? Are they going to become rich? Are people going to make movies about them? No, although they probably are in the background somewhere. So
yeah, I think so.
You could argue, well, the life of a mosquito is inconsequential, but you get rid of a mosquito, you tear apart a whole ecosystem, and then things don't work out the way they do. But you personally as a human, where your consciousness comes in, is a deeper level. And whereas nowadays in Western culture, it appears that it's about self-fulfillment, it's about getting ahead, it's individualistic. I would say that that is why the world is not functioning the way it should in terms of having better education and people being happier and us having a more balanced nature. I think what we need to do is remember, we are all connected. And our purpose of living is not to destroy each other. Our purpose of living is to survive. Our purpose of living is to help create life. And whether that means that you wind up dying and your remains become food again for a tree to bloom, and that tree helps absorb the oxygen, and then that oxygen helps someone breathe, and that becomes a home for a bird and an ecosystem for ants. I mean, there's a much bigger story to life. And life itself cannot be defined as human life. It has to be life in general. Oh, that TEA just went off the rails. So, in conclusion, in order to understand the purpose of life, you must recognize that life includes all life, human or else, otherwise, and see it as just surviving.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I totally agree. I totally agree. There needs to be this kind of symbiosis between anything that lives must live within the ecosystem rather than overpowering the ecosystem. Oh my goodness, I feel a rant. I feel a sustainability ecological rant coming on about humans being the scourge of the earth. The other thing I was going to mention is about the mosquito. Instantly I had visions of a little genius mosquito with a quill and a cravat, sitting with like some papyrus paper, like penning a masterpiece, and you know what I mean, the essence of mosquitoism. I don't know, it just popped into my head. I'm going to write that down as a character.
Writing little tiny ideas that pack a punch.
And then like rolling it up in a scroll and like stamping it, and quick, with great haste, take this to the general. Oh, I don't know. It's becoming Napoleonic.
This will be the buzz of everything.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, another thing I discovered one day was that 70% of mosquitoes are pollinating, which is another. I say this to kids when I say, please don't harm them. And then they go, wow, that's really bad. And smash it against the glass and pop it.
Well, it's funny because I think only the females drink blood. So
yes, you're just slaughtering the female population of mosquitoes.
Yes.
You know, it's great. It's a tragedy, the mosquito tragedy. Now, the final question was from Theo in Polymath 2-11. which is another philosophical existential question. Would you rather eat rotten egg sandwiches or rotten cheese sandwiches?
Well, that one's quite simple. I would rather eat rotten cheese sandwiches because cheese is rotten anyway. And the
Yes.
cheese that they have here is just full of mold, and everyone says it's gourmet and delicious. Rotten eggs, however, I believe might kill you with salmonella. I don't really know what kind of bacteria they carry, but they also smell like farts, and I don't want to be eating fart sandwiches. So I suppose if I had to choose, I would go with the questionably safer option, which is rotten cheese sandwiches, because then I'll just say it's gourmet. Delicious.
Yeah, I think you have to. I've had some. I'm not really sure what the word gourmet means when I consider some of the gourmet foods I've supposedly eaten, and then I just thought, oh, I would rather have the cheap one.
But you've seen the 1,000-year egg, right?
Yeah, I tried it. I ate that. Yeah, didn't enjoy it a great deal, if I'm honest. Wasn't a highlight of my culinary adventures, but I tried it. I was given it on a plate, and like, eat this. It's an honor. Okay.
Gelatinous scarab. Thank you.
Yeah, it wasn't my favorite. But I guess it has to be preserved. Otherwise, it really is just rotten. But if it can be preserved, because I mean, thinking about preserved foods, I always think about kimchi, and I love kimchi. And yesterday I had some 4-year-old kimchi, which was absolutely delicious. It was fantastic. It was just so tasty and so nutritious. I feel like 25% happier when I consume kimchi, and when I don't, I feel morose.
Never tried it.
Oh, really? It's delicious. I'll bring you some. I'll send you some to your house.
Yay!
But anyway, Katie, we've answered 3 questions. Oh, by the way, what would I go for? I would have the rotten cheese sandwich as well. I think it's the only option. So we've answered 3 questions. So if anybody else has some more questions they'd like to ask Catey Teacher, or me, or any other teacher, then please let us know. But apart from that, I'll see you next time with another wonderful Jool teacher. But goodbye to you guys, and goodbye from Catey Teacher.